I checked in with Barry Levinson once I'd arrived in Newtown, and he said that along with his producing partner, Tom Fontana, he was producing a new 10-part series for Fox TV called The Jury. He was also going to direct a couple of episodes, and then, as it happens, he cast himself in the role of a judge. Each episode took place in the same New York courtroom and began at the start of jury deliberations. The trial was then recounted through flashbacks. I mentioned to Barry that there'd been a British series also called The Jury, which had aired just a year before, in 2002, on PBS in the States, and I wondered if it was based on that. I'd seen a couple of episodes and really liked it. It was also very successful and ran for a few seasons. Barry said that no, it wasn't the same. The UK series focused equally on the jurors' personal problems and the highly controversial cases they were to decide. And quite frankly, it was much more interesting than the Levinson-Fontana version. Fox felt the same, and although the 10 episodes were aired, the series cancellation was announced in July 2004 due to low ratings. Tom Fontana and Barry were a very successful producing team and had such hits as the prison drama Oz and Homicide: Life on the Street, which was set in Baltimore. So it was surprising that this one failed. Although unfortunately it happens, and then it's time to move on to the next project. For the time being, I did what was somewhat uncharacteristic for me. I asked Barry if there was anything I could do on the Jury series. The scripts were being created by TV writers, so I wasn't needed there. So I put my actor's face on and said, well, can I audition for a role? You know, I never ever asked Barry if he could give me work on a project, but I was always available whenever he needed me. So this really was a bold step in taking care of myself. The fact was, I'd become a member of the Screen Actors Guild, SAG, from my role in Disclosure, and I'd made enough money to qualify for health insurance. However, as every actor knows, the jobs must keep coming in order to reach the SAG annual financial requirement, which is a substantial amount. When supporting actors can't reach that amount and are left without health coverage, which is a scary place to be, they may take stand-in or extra work. Anything to be able to earn what is equal to the holy grail for actors, enough to cover health insurance. From my experience casting films, I've always been sensitive to this essential need for actors, beyond exercising the acting muscle and being seen, of course. Consequently, I would consider my actor friends and others who I knew needed work when I was casting roles. It did aggravate me, though, when friends insisted I bring them in to read for a role when I knew they were totally inappropriate for the character. But that's the norm for an actor who's constantly hungry to work, regardless of their need for health insurance. Years ago, when Emma Thompson was married to Kenneth Branagh, there was a joke going around that actors could totally relate to. Kenneth came home while Emma was cooking dinner. "Hello, darling, I'm home," he said, to which she replied, "I'm in the kitchen." Then Kenneth said very excitedly, "Oh, is there anything in it for me?" Well, when I was pretty much asking Barry that same question, was there a role in the jury for me, he shrugged in his non-committal way, which either meant no or maybe. Within a couple of days, though, he did come up with a role for me. This was a good lesson. Doing what made me uncomfortable brought results. It was also a prime example of ask and it shall be given to you. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be opened to you. Matthew certainly got it right. Well, he was a saint after all. The role Barry offered me was court reporter, and since every episode was set in the courtroom, this was a recurring role. Hallelujah! I was also paid as a principal performer, even though I didn't have any dialogue, because stenographer was a specialised role. Ironically, although I was a whiz at shorthand and typing, I didn't have a clue about using a stenograph machine. My lovely friend Angela Alvarez was a trained court reporter, though, and in fact, I'd cast her in Tin Men years before. Then it was actually a fluke because she just happened to be in Baltimore visiting her boyfriend, a crew member, when we were shooting a courtroom scene. I later cast her in Disclosure too. Unfortunately, since we were filming in Bayonne, New Jersey, where incidentally The Sopranos had been filmed, Angela wasn't able to take this particular job because she lived in LA. Even though I'd never used a stenograph machine, she tutored me over the phone, explaining that there were fewer keys than a conventional keyboard, and the machine worked by pressing multiple keys simultaneously to spell out whole syllables, words and phrases with a single hand motion. Brilliant. Sitting on set at my position alongside the judge's desk, I practiced this motion on the machine, which was so different from typing on a computer. But I managed it, and for all intents and purposes, I was a court reporter. I was only challenged once when one of the directors, Jake Paltrow, brother of Gwyneth, asked me how it worked. I had to confess that I was only faking it. I enjoyed this new experience, despite the fact that I had to leave Newtown at 4 a.m. and drive close to 2 hours to New Jersey, regularly in snow and ice, since it was the middle of winter. I also met a lot of great people, some of whom have become lifelong friends. Anna Friel, a very talented British actor who'd worked with Barry on his film Everlasting Peace, was one of the leads in the show. And we had some nice chats in makeup, but I wouldn't call us friends. I was really thrilled when the wonderful Bruno Kirby, who I'd worked with on Tin Men and Good Morning Vietnam, came in to play the role of a lawyer in one of the episodes. On that particular day, I wasn't feeling too well, with a bit of a flu bug. I had my own room in an extended version of the Honey Wagon, film jargon for the portable toilet trailer. I'm sure you can imagine why it was called the Honey Wagon. Fortunately, I was at the other end of where the toilets were located, but it wasn't the most comfortable and really quite chilly. When Bruno could say I wasn't well, he said I could rest in his trailer when I wasn't needed on set. It was nice and cozy and warm with all the facilities, including a comfortable couch where I could sleep. Oh, Bruno was so sweet and made tea for me and brought pills for my headache and lozenges for my sore throat. This lovely, kind and talented man was a very special person who sadly was to die suddenly just 3 years later at the age of 57 from complications related to leukemia. It was such a shock to us all, especially Barry, who was a close friend, and of course Bruno's wife, Lynn. We all miss him so much. It was during this time that I got a letter from Nathan. It had been a couple of years since I'd heard from him, and I was frankly disappointed that he hadn't reached out to me after I'd sent messages via his cousin Eric in Las Vegas, also telling him about my move to Connecticut. I'd given him my address and telephone number and was hoping to hear from him. Eric had indicated that Nathan wasn't doing too well, but he didn't elaborate. However, the eventual letter from Nathan did elaborate. He was always very articulate, and the letter he wrote detailed his life on the streets, where he'd been for quite a few months. It seemed that his mother and stepfather were heavily into the drug, crystal meth, not only selling it, but using it. Both had been jailed and eventually deported to Mexico. Nathan said his stepfather had sold everything that they owned, including the signed photo of Michael Jackson I'd got for Nathan, which was his pride and joy. In the letter, he said how much he missed me and that he was so sorry he hadn't been in touch, and that he was ashamed of how far he'd fallen. He never wanted to disappoint me. He wanted me to be proud of him. It was a sad and desperate letter and made me cry. There was no return address, but I immediately called Eric and told him to have Nathan call me collect. The next day he did, and I asked him if he wanted to come and stay with me in Connecticut for a while. He was practically jumping with joy on the other end of the phone. "Yes, yes, please," he yelled. Next time, a life with a teenager and treading the boards again. Thanks, as always, for listening.